general collective reading for the week of April 22nd, 2024, Year of the Young Red Dragon. We have just entered Taurus season, and tomorrow is the full moon in Scorpio. The mysterious, watery depths. Sex, death, and taxes, the three ultimate taboos. And we just got through tax season, or we're in tax season. And so, first full moon since the eclipse, guaranteed to be a big one. So let's see what kind of energy we can expect this week. What things to look out for and what we should keep track of. A little lighthearted. Okay, so first we have rejoice and celebration with this lighthearted. Now, unironically, rather pointedly, I was just listening to the episode of We Can Do Hard Things with Glennon Doyle and Abby and the other person and the other person. And, sorry. And it's just Glennon Doyle's name is right there in the title. And I just selected one, and it was the episode about fun and joy. And how sometimes people forget joy and fun and then think that the things that they're doing that are not the normal errands and everyday tasks or work are actually work. They think that when they're not doing their job, they're having fun. And the person who was interviewed was this person who had this experience of they started doing a guitar class every week, and they started realizing they were anticipating going, they're having the joy, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, I didn't finish listening to it, but it really tied into something that's been coming up a lot this week, which is that I will say it in the form of a story that was taught to me, which is one of the ways that people were teaching me about Taoism when I was a very young lass. And it's the story of a monk who's walking, and then a tiger starts chasing him. And so the monk is laughing in his sandals and his robe and running. And there's a cliff. And he looks over the edge of the cliff, and he knows at the bottom is a crashing, roaring river with dastardly sharp rocks. So he's okay. So he steps off the cliff and grabs onto a branch. Or maybe he was falling and he grabs onto the branch. So he grabs onto the branch, and the tiger is snarling above him, snarling down. And the river is crashing and rocking towards him. And there's a strawberry next to him on the branch. And the question is what does he do? And if you're familiar with any of these studies, obviously you know, so don't be offended or don't think I'm being patronizing or condescending. But if you don't know, the thing to do in that situation is to eat the strawberry. Now, all the years since, there's all these people Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, meditation apps, people know a lot more of these concepts and practicing them. And that's really weird thing to say, because people have always known about these concepts and practicing them. But that was very, very powerful to my young ears to start learning, because it can be really easy to feel guilt about feeling joy when there's grief, suffering, death, torture, chaos, and cruelty around you. And it's really important actually to understand that the best way that you can show up for the whole planet, Earth system, solar systems, multiverse is to like take care of your nervous system, take care of yourself. And then when you show up for people, I was just talking about this actually this week. This is perfect that this is the message for the week. Your capacity is different. Your capacity is better. And I want to talk about that for one more moment because sometimes I think we can feel like high and mighty. Like, oh, when I hold space for people, when I'm at my group therapy, yoga class, prayer group, church, like, no. Like, when you're getting groceries and the person behind you bumps their freaking cart into you 3 times. That's the person that you also need to hold space for. And for yourself in that moment. To just be like, I'm going to continue getting my groceries and move on with my task. It's really important to understand that how our energy signature moves through the world is what changes the world. And I'll stop there. So if there are times for joy and celebration, I see celebrations, joyous things, energies coming up this week. Really fully rejoice in them. Don't half-ass it. Okay? We have also fight, which, yeah. You know, in the age when people talk about manifestation or what's yours is already yours or things being easy, it's like there's a difference in things being easy and in things not moving at all. And like if you want something, you always have to fight for it. Point blank, period. And so it's like, are you willing to fight for your beliefs? Are you willing to fight for your dream? Are you willing to fight for your vision? And I feel like that comes in many different like layers and circumstances, and you can take that as you will. But it is the time to fight for what you believe in. And to not really, that can also be fighting yourself. That can also be, fighting old habits or fighting old relationships or old addictions or like the old energy fighting to reconcile with the new energy. Because this eclipse, all of this season is really unfolding for all of us a new energy and a new path forward. So it's really like, how are you willing to like move forward, and are you willing to like fight for what you say like you are and what you believe? And you should be. And the other thing is like, who was writing this post recently? I saw a post sometime recently where someone was talking about like no matter whether you're like a gas station attendant or a celebrity or a healer or a practitioner or a doctor, if you're in this position where you're going to be in the public all the time, working with the public all the time, you're opening yourself up to attack physically, spiritually, recreationally, people commenting on your belief system, your appearance, your practices, and like you have to like know that. So you have to like ask yourself like, how are you going to deal with that? And in a larger context, it's like whatever you say that like you are and that you're going to do, there will be some resistance and pushback. That doesn't mean that it's not accurate. And so like you have to fight to hold on to that as you move through the world. I have a great example for you on this. In The Office, the UK version, the US version, there's this moment where Pam, in the early seasons, Pam and Roy are together because they separated and they got back together. And Pam's like, I'm new Pam. And she goes to the bar and she like ordered a beer and a beer light. And the bartender like didn't give her the light. And she like just turns around, but then she like stops and looks at the camera and stiffens her resolve. And she's like, actually, like this was supposed to be a light. And then he like changes it for her. And I think that's such a great example because sometimes that fight is not in the most like dramatic, drastic ways or whatever. It's in these subtle moment to moment interactions. It's in the small things, which is like, are you going to fight to maintain, the aura that you have built up for yourself, your energy, your life force, your chi, or are you going to let other people axe away at it and just go quietly into the night and accept meekness as your way of being? We have the Hermit. So the Hermit is the card that's connected to Virgo. And when people talk about Virgo, people often talk about, health, cleanliness, habits, routines, organization. But, Virgo, I think one of the interesting connections here is that, like, Virgo is also connected to, like, Virgin, the Vesta, the goddess of home, right? The watcher of the temple. And the Hermit is this energy of, like, going into your own like inner temple, of being inside, of studying, of like focusing and really finding things that have not been known before, but that are sort of like uncovered at the perfect time, of knowing how to like to fight for like who like you are, even if it's like an outlier position, and then to stand in that energy and do the thing, do the research, say the, reckless thing, to help shift the energy, to help bring about needed cures and medicine for the people, for the time, for the earth. The most beautiful example, which like maybe I need to make a couple tarot decks, but anyways, let me not speak on that before I do it. Let me just do it. That was 12-12. The most potent example that I can think of with what I was just describing of this energy of the Hermit is like Samwell Tarly in like the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. In the first 2 seasons, Samwell Tarly all the time, all the way, Samwell Stan. But like when I think about like the fact that like Ser Jorah Mormont was like about to like lose his mind from grayscale, and they were just gonna send him to the cliffs to like essentially like a leper colony to just lose his mind and die. Samuel Tarly was like, no, I read about it in a book. And he had to like steal the keys and steal the books and sneak out on the dead of night, and he contributed to saving the entire world in that world, which was Game of Thrones, which is fictional, or at least the North. But like he like so many times throughout Sam's progression, people would just laugh at him, and what would he always say? Like, I read about it in a book. There's this energy where whatever you have been studying and whatever and like it's funny because like I'm saying studying in the English way and in the Bayesian way as well. Like studying does not necessarily mean you sat down and you read it in a book, although that's obviously heavily indicated. Study means like, what have you been watching? What have you been focused on? What have you been visualizing, dreaming about, praying upon? Like literally what has been drawing your interest? What kind of things that you've been studying have you been able to really see the connections to in your daily life? Those things are going to be highlighted this time in this week. So it's important to start making some of those connections, because that's going to help you in building up your health, your practices, your energy of how you walk in this world, how you move throughout life. And it's especially important at this time because I feel like, we all carry unique medicine, and it's really the time for people to, share theirs in a powerful way. Additionally, herbalism and things to do with like wellness that is not necessarily from a allopathic standpoint could be coming up this week. Then we have the Eight of Swords. I feel like part of this energy of the Hermit and like studying and like going inward and focusing is also to prevent a sort of burnout of a kind of like imposter syndrome. The Eight of Swords is this energy that's like Like all your life you want to perform at the Apollo. And then someone just like is like, "Oh, like you leave your house on a Tuesday." And someone's like, "Hey, come with me for a road trip," and then like unlocks the door to the Apollo and then puts you there, and then somebody cancels, and you're sitting on stage at the Apollo, and they're like, "Hey, like, do you know anyone who could do anything right now?" And you just completely freeze. The eight of swords. Sorry, I just really had to look at this for a second. The Eight of Swords is not necessarily an energy that has to like be permeative or continuous, but just a moment. So you're like sitting on stage and you know like your heart is like, "Oh my God, like this is what I've always dreamt of. Of course I know exactly what to do." And then your brain is like, "I haven't prepared, I'm not ready." And then you're just like, "What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" Like you actually know exactly what to do. Is to stand up and say like, "Hey, I've got this." And like the reason I was saying everyone has their own medicine and you might have to fight for who you are is because like when you have your moments, like you actually have to like seize them. And like I think what's really important to remember is that like even if those moments fail, failure is how we learn the most valuable lessons. Really and truly. And getting comfortable with like fear, failure, and like continuity is a part of the progress of like understanding alchemy. It's a part of understanding how to like transmute energy, how to take that lead and turn it into gold, how the clam, the oyster, takes the most smallest grain of salt, the most irritant, and coats it with enough layers that it becomes the freshwater pearl, the most sought after gem. So it's like your gifts, your ideas, your visions are most sought after. So how can you show up for them and show up for yourself and just continue to find ways to celebrate in this apocalyptic era? Because that's what the world needs and that's what you need. That's the general message for the week. Thanks so much.